Much of it you know already. Tomorrow, of course, that big meeting with UEFA regarding the future of Euro 2020 and the Champions League. But we'll start with today's news that the Bundesliga has suspended matches until at least April the 2nd. Some very interesting quotes coming out from the Bundesliga chief executive saying tens of thousands of jobs are at stake. We've reached a point where Bundesliga has to admit, yes, we are manufacturing a product, and if we no longer manufacture it, then we cease to exist. Gab Marcotti, is it as serious as he suggests?
Look, it's obviously a serious situation for the Bundesliga. It's a serious situation for anybody who produces content. But you know what? I think this is also a fair amount of posturing, of trying to get help from the federation, from the government. The reality is German clubs, like all clubs who aren't playing football, will face a cash flow problem simply because they're not playing games. And so while the league is suspended, there isn't cash coming in, and they still need to pay salaries. But I also think, there is a bit of a sky is falling, not in terms of the seriousness of the pandemic, obviously, but in terms of the threat to the German game. A lot of this is predicated when they make their projections on the fact that television companies aren't going to pay up because they're not showing games. Well, that remains to be seen. That's one for the lawyers. A lot of leagues also have insurance tied with these contracts. We are talking about an act of God. We are talking about force majeure here. But obviously, from his perspective, he wants to protect his business as much as possible. I think we'll have a much clearer picture going forward about whether these games have to be canceled and never played again, or postponed into the summer with a possible postponement of the Euros. So, yeah, it's a blow, but you know what? Look around you. Look at the stock market. Look at what's happening. It's a blow to everybody.
That leads us into the next question, which is looking ahead to that meeting tomorrow, of course, Gab. What are we expecting to learn after it concludes?
I think there's no question that there's a strong impetus towards moving Euro 2020. I think it's what the majority of the stakeholders want. I can't imagine really all but a handful of people being against the principle. People want to be able to wrap up their leagues, and they figure they've really got no shot if they have to wrap everything up by the end of May. But if you have until June 30th, you may have a chance. UEFA as well want to be able to wrap up the Champions League in some shape or form. Now, we have no idea if the epidemic is going to allow us to do that, but they want to be in the running. They want to have the possibility of doing that so that you can get some kind of, I don't want to say a neat finish, but at least a clean finish to all these leagues, and then move forward into next season.
A lot of speculation about how they're going to conclude the Champions League, Gab. Maybe a neutral venue for the final knockout stages. Is that something that feasibly might happen?
I think I think they're going to listen to any proposal right now. One proposal which is gaining steam is obviously you need to go and finish the round of 16 in the Europa League and Champions League. Then maybe the quarterfinals, one-legged neutral venue. And then perhaps you look at the Champions League final, having sort of a Final Four type scenario where you play the semifinals and the final, within 3-4 days of each other. Look, UEFA are very mindful that they're going to have to reduce the number of Champions League fixtures, which means broadcasters are going to take a hit for that. But there has to be give and take between them and the domestic leagues, because domestic leagues, most likely, most of them won't be able to play out all their remaining fixtures.
It's all speculation, obviously, at the moment. But regarding that plan for the Champions League, it seems sensible, doesn't it?
It does. And if I'm in that committee that is presenting these options as a possibility when they go and discuss this on Tuesday, the one thing that I would say to that committee is, look, we're going into a beehive right now. We're going to have to deal with all sorts of different federations and different people who have different interests, and they're looking out for their own league and their own situation. And yet we have to find a solution that we can all live with. And so it doesn't have to be a perfect solution, because there are no perfect solutions in this problem.
Yeah.
You have to find the one solution that you think is the least bad? Of all the bad possibilities, which one is the least bad? Which one is the one that we can all live with? Which one is the one that is a give and take, but we can find a middle point, a middle ground where everybody can say, you know what, let's go after that. Something like that Final Four that you just mentioned, it is feasible, it is realistic, and it is indeed something that people can get excited about, something that we haven't seen before. Maybe we're making a positive out of a negative. Maybe we're trying to get the best solution that we can with the circumstances available, and I do think it's reasonable.
There has to be some give and take, obviously.
Yes, and I think what you'll find, and certainly everybody on the committee of UEFA and all the other boards, you'll find out all the people who are interested in the big picture and all the ones that are just looking out for themselves. That will become abundantly clear. And hopefully the good guys outweigh the bad guys, and they do use common sense, and they do come to an agreement that is for the best for everybody, not just for certain teams. Because that's pretty much what's happened in European football for years. It always seems to be the big names and the big teams either get away with things. You talk about right now with Manchester City. We all think that they're going to get away with this because they have the money and because of the size of the club. This will pull everybody together, no question.
Don Hutchison is with us as well. Don, does this resolution for you make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think the noises in the UK on the radio stations that think that's going to happen tomorrow, they're saying that everything is on the table. So that's including suspending the season, finishing it late. They're sort of saying, look, we're going to have a conversation and everything is on the table, if you like. So we're going to have the conversation and see how we fix this. I agree with the chaps. I think, in my view, I think the season has to be finished. I don't think you could call the season off now and anoint Liverpool champions. It wouldn't seem right. Likewise with the teams at the bottom of the league, likewise with the teams throughout the divisions. I just don't think that sits right. I think somehow we've got to finish the leagues. And if that means we lose the Euros, then so be it, really. Disappointing, but it has to be done because it's a very sensitive issue.
Go on, Gab.
I just want to make clear, UEFA aren't at any point going to tell leagues how they're going to finish and what finish a league means. There's people here in England, including Greg Dyke, the head of the FAs, who says that you have to finish the league and you have to play out every single fixture, and that might take us through to August, but so be it. I think that's an absolutely demented idea, but you know what? UEFA aren't going to get into that. UEFA are simply going to tell leagues, listen, by June 30th, you need to have everything wrapped up. If you want to play in next season's Champions League or Europa League, July 1st or July 2nd or whenever it is, you have to give us who's playing in the Champions League, who's playing in the Europa League, and that's it. The rest of it, you can go and finish your league in 2029 for all we care. We're not going to get involved in that. People in England want to keep playing until Kingdom Come, as Wayne Rooney has suggested. They're free to do that. If people elsewhere want to have either some kind of mini league or playoff to wrap up the league, or they can fit all their fixtures in, then they're free to go and do that. But I think the message that has to come from European football is that as far as next season's Champions League is concerned, we move on, and that means early July, you have to submit your names. Pick them any which way you want. Pick them out of a hat if you like. But don't give us this, well, our league doesn't finish until August nonsense. If you want your league to keep going till August, that's fine. We're not going to be involved in that. You give us the names July 1st if you want to play.
But then you could have a genuine power struggle, can you, Gab? For example, if the Premier League Go on.
There's no power struggle. Honestly, this isn't something that anybody can entertain. Nobody in the world is thinking about playing leagues until August, apart from people like Greg Dyke and his ilk here in England, because there are different climatic conditions. There's different situations throughout Europe.
But if they want to, Gab, they can, can't they? For example, the Premier League will be like, wait a minute, we pay these players, and if we want them to play up until August, then that's the way it's going to be.
Then they're absolutely free to do that. The only thing that they need to do, though, is if they also want these guys who they pay to play in the Champions League and get a slice of that pie, then July 1st or July 2nd, and in any case before the preliminary round start, they have to submit their teams for that season. If then they want to go and get their jollies by playing out the string, into July and August, they're absolutely free to do that. But they have to tell UEFA which teams are going to participate in the Champions League and in the Europa League by the start of July. by whichever method that they choose.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.